Hi, everybody. I am so excited to be collaborating with Gwyn Jones and all of the members of the Association of Sustainability Practitioners. And with that is this collaboration on interviewing the members so that we can get to know more about them, but most especially what the association is doing to promote the association's practice of sustainability. So let me get started with introducing Gwyn Jones. He is the director at the Association of Sustainability Practitioners, ASP for short, apprentice elder, keynote speaker, guest lecturer, advisory board member, promoting sustainability practices and purpose-led enterprise that creates environmental and social value. ASP leading the development of a series of learning events whose objective is to encourage people and organizations to move from unsustainable to sustainable practices. These events promote collaboration, sharing and learning, and are themselves based on highly collaborative relationships with many organizations, working on new emerging business models that encourage and develop intellectual, human, and social capital transactions. Welcome. I'm so delighted you're here, Gwyn. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much, Lourdes, and thank you for your work and efforts and support within the ASP as well. It's deeply appreciated. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So let's get this, I guess, this show, I don't know yet what we're going to call it because it's very new. Yeah. This is our kind of premiere, but I hope that the objective would be to give more voice in terms of the current developments in the sustainability sphere. So let me get started by asking the question, how did you get into all the sustainability, I guess, industry now, if I may call it that, now that everybody's jumping on it?
Yeah, good question. I've often wondered that myself. It was inadvertently, I guess, is in one word. I spent the first 25 years of my career helping set up and run IT and professional services and business continuity consulting organizations across most of Europe, South Africa, the Middle East and the Far East, and loved it. Really had a good time. Worked for some amazing companies until one day I realized that it was just pretty pointless. And I just decided to walk out of it at about the age of, I think about 50. So it's about sort of 17, 18 years ago, without any real conscious thought about what I was going to get into. But to cut the story short a bit, what I've learned about what I did at that time was I turned my back on what was essentially a wealth creation activity, which was occupying all my time and very neatly destroying everything of value in my life. You know, I was earning a really good income. I had, you know, all the expense accounts you could think of, but I was just denying myself and my family any sort of love and relationships. So I just decided I couldn't go back anymore. And I set on this path of just literally wiping the slate clean, starting with nothing, and trying to find out what I could do with my life that was creating value. Although I couldn't articulate it, then I've learned on the way a different vocabulary. I've worked with the most inspiring people across the world who have forced me to think differently, to talk differently, and to behave differently. And ultimately, you know, what it's all about is not so much a sustainability industry as such, but it's a good way of describing it. But it's more just a way of living that's in harmony with nature and with society and creates benefit, you know, rather than what most companies do, which is try and minimize the harm they do. So that's one way of looking at it.
That's such a beautiful story. And I know I've only been a member for a very short time, but this is one thing I love about interviewing people is getting to know their background. And it's such a beautiful word that you talked about, harmony. I love that word. And, you know, creating value from the inside out has never been, it's like an industry that will never go out of style. I call it that.
Yeah. Well, it's industry with the small I. It's industrial. You know, you've got to work at it every day. So although it's not industry in the conventional business sense, it's enterprise, it's work we all do. I mean, I can't imagine you or me ever retiring from what we do,
Right.
because it is what we do, it's who we are, and that's what a good life is, really.
And that's
Hopefully.
also, yeah, and that's also another thing. I think the definition of sustainability, people has, I guess, recently, unfortunately, has identified sustainability with just a bandwagon, but it's really who we are. It's an inherent characteristic of people who wanted to really take care. I call it a
Mm,
caretaker mentality. And
absolutely, absolutely.
so, which leads me to my second question. What have you been seeing to be the trends that's going to be happening in this space in the next decade?
Oh, well, as I say, forecasting is really difficult, especially when it talks about the future. Um, well, I mean, if you'd asked me that question 2 months ago, it would have been a very different answer I'd give. And now, in a sense, I'm less sure, and in other ways, I'm much more sure. I think the world has literally, after 40 or 50 years of people like you and me banging on the door and making the noise, they've suddenly woken up. They've realized that, at the very last moment, we have a really stiff challenge to face. The UN summed it up in 2019, just after Extinction Rebellion here in the UK made a huge wave, and Greta Thunberg worldwide and David Attenborough. This publication from the UN almost went unnoticed, but it just a nice simple one that said, if we carry on as we are by 2060, we will have extinguished all life on Earth. Now, if that is not a wake-up call, especially to people my age, because really it's a stark reminder that it's people my age that really back the Earth into this cul-de-sac where we are capable of literally destroying all life on Earth, because we haven't been, as you so beautifully put it, we haven't been caretakers. We've been takers. We've just taken from the Earth relentlessly without any real thought, and quite often without any malice either. We didn't realize the consequences of what we're doing. So to me, one of the big epiphanies on the way was about 3 years ago when I came back from a meeting. And bear in mind, we're a member of the Association of Sustainability Practitioners. And I came back from a meeting and I was talking to my wife and a very dear friend who's also a very powerful mentor of mine. I said to her, God, I just understood, I don't have a clue what sustainability means. Because people don't know what we're trying to sustain. We don't know what sustaining means. Where do I go from here? And this friend turned around to me, as she so often does, and just said, Gwyn, sustainability is just the outcome of conscious thinking. And I was dumbfounded. I thought, what a stupid thing to say. And then it sunk in. And then I realized, of course it is. Because when we're conscious of what we want to do, what we're conscious of the impacts, both positive and negative, we have, and when we're honest with ourselves, then we're in a position of power, because we can choose what we do. We can choose the actions we take, and we can choose to create the future we want. And that's the hard work, because none of the answers we come up with to that are easy. But if we're not conscious, and I don't think more than 10% of our industry is conscious, they're just carrying on with business as usual. So the agenda that we've got to draw up and discover and implement over the next 10 years is a long time, but I think it's shorter than that. I think in the next 5 to 6 years, every business person on the planet, every politician, every mother, every father has to work out how we're going to live in harmony and peace with nature and balance with it, because we're so far off it at the moment. And the really big challenge is that no one in our lifetime has ever done it. No one has ever tried to work out what's the plan for 8 billion people, let alone 10 billion people. We don't have a target. We don't have a blueprint. We don't have a plan we can pull off the shelf. We're going to have to make it up. So the big question in my mind is, where do we go for the answers? And to me, that's what sustainability is now. It's about waking up, about being conscious, becoming conscious, and then making the right choices. And in industry, that means net zero is the first base camp. It's base camp 1 in this journey. Net zero is barely touching what we need to achieve. We have to get to 0 carbon, 0 impact on the planet, so that then we can learn how to do the most important thing, which is to have a positive impact, to nurture the very thing that nurtures us, to create more human capital, more environmental capital. So that's the agenda for the next 10 years. And 10 years in the future sounds a long time, but I'm not sure why you picked that, but really it is the timescale we've got, because by 2050, we will have peak population of 10 billion people. And we have to learn in the next 10 years how to do something that we've never done before, and get it right, and get it global. So that by the time that your son, who's what, 12 this week, right? By the time he's 42, he will be living a good, peaceful life, thriving, not a poor quality life, but thriving, and bringing up his own children. Hopefully, that's what we've got to aim for.
You're making me a little bit teary-eyed with what you said about conscious thinking and harmony in nature, really, and in the planet, harmony with the planet, because it's quite humbling, I guess, how Mother Earth has natured us in such a long time that it's now time to give back, and actually have to, I don't even know what's the word, but really, again, consciousness is the word that you use on how we're able to, like a mother to a child. You were mentioning my son turning 12.
Absolutely.
And how that symbiotic relationship can happen. And it's a big ask. It's a big ask, but we have to do it, because as you've said, we're at the cul-de-sac, we're at the precipice of wherein if we don't do this, it's going to not work anymore. And so thank you for sharing that. And to go back to your question of why I chose 10, and it's fascinating too, because you started with the story of, how people, I guess it's just plot from air for me, but in the real estate industry, they were talking about there's a turnaround every 10 years. And so that's why I picked that number. But one of the things that I'm fascinated with what you shared as well is how I think everybody's awakened. And since 2019, we were talking, and then 2020, of course, the pandemic happened. And I think that's really catapulted us to be more awakened. And I'm so amazed, especially with the young people, Greta, and has moving the planet in certain ways that we have never seen such consciousness in young people. And it's amazing.
Well, this is what they all did. XR and Greta Thunberg, they raised the consciousness of the planet, literally, in a matter of weeks. And it was good timing, because I think what it did, it tuned into the doubt that was going around, the uncertainty, the concern that people think actually it does look like this climate change stuff might be real. It might be something we have to worry about. And then David Attenborough, Greta Thunberg, XR came on, and these are not radical tree-hugging hippies. These are doctors, nurses, policemen in England, they're county judges, they're mothers and fathers, they're school children. These are not the radical left or the radical right. They're society, and they were out on the street asking for a future for their children. What a simple question. And they did it without violence. They did it with power, but without violence. I know one of the people that helped create the strategy for how they engage with the police, and their key word was, we're going to treat the police with kindness, because they're not trained to respond to kindness. And it means we keep our integrity as human beings. And that, so raising the consciousness of the world was really done. And now I think what I've heard since then at every level, especially at governmental level, but even in my own household, there's one question on everybody's lips: what can we do? it's no longer a question of do we do anything, it's we have to, but what is it that we can do? So that's the agenda you're talking about. What is that agenda that we need to create? And the inspiration I draw from, and I'm going to preempt one of your questions about ASP, because ASP for me is where I learn everything that I know comes from all the work I do within ASP and with the members. And Amin Pasandide, the guy that helps create and maintain our website for us, he shared a book with me called the Night of the Black Jaguar, and it's written by a Peruvian shaman. And his simple words on about page 10 of the book that stopped me in my tracks and brought tears to my eyes were, he said, for the last 5,000 words in their oral tradition, these Peruvian indigenous Indians, these primitive people, these tribes of uncivilized people, as we call them in the West, had this phrase that says, when we forget to nurture what nurtures us, everything dies. And that's where we are today. The caretakers have stopped taking care. And I like to put things in a positive, not let's do less negative. So the positive spin on that for me was quite simple. When we learn to nurture what nurtures us, everything lives. And nurturing, and you so beautifully embodied it then, literally, nurturing is predominantly a female quality, a practice, a way of being that women are particularly skilled at. And it all comes down to one 4-letter word: love. All we have to do is to love the planet like we love our children. And if we love our children, then we have to love the planet. And it's as simple as that. And that's a scary word to use in a business context. But we've got to make it ubiquitous. We've got to get the CEOs of this world, who are mothers and fathers, every day thinking, what am I going to do today that will make my children proud of me? What am I doing to contribute to a good world for them to live into? And I sure as hell is not increase the shareholder value. But that has to be embraced in it. That's the economic model we live in. But it's got to be more than that. And I believe if we can relate, like you and I are relating now, with everyone in business and in government, like that, and engage with that question every day, not how to increase the share price, how do we make the world a better place for our children to inherit, then we will achieve it easily in 10 years. And it doesn't need to be a disastrous change, because it would just be looking for things that will be good things to have, more time with our children, more time exercising, more time meditating, more time producing great products and great services, more time helping each other. And that's what COVID taught us in the UK, is that we've built an employment model based on consumption and production of worthless stuff that eventually gets just put in a landfill. And what we needed the last 2 years, and what I believe people have realized now we need, are the nurturers, the caretakers. We need the nurses, we need the teachers, we need the doctors, we need the people that empty our trash cans for us, we need the people that look after our roads, we need the people that deliver the food to us. We don't need the people so much that make all the cars, make all the phones, make all the laptops. We need some of them, but we're completely out of balance. So we're learning to value the caretakers and the nurturers. And when we do that, as the Peruvians will say, everything will live.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot of really beautiful words that you use there, but I think I sum it up in my head when you talked about environmental capital. Just recently, I had somebody told me about the 3 capitals. You have to have financial capital, intellectual capital, social capital, but this brings forth this 4th capital that you're just talking about. Is when COVID hits, the caregivers are the heroes of our times. And that's exactly what it is to be able to bring forth into how, again, take what we have so that it returns to us tenfold.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a strange word, caretaker, because in Britain, you know, every school has a caretaker, and it's normally he's this little old man who's nearly retired, and he goes around with a brush and cleaning the place up, and everybody looks down on him. And I worked with one, because I worked as a school cleaner for a while during the holidays, and it was only during that I realized caretaker is two words. It's not caretaker, it's a caretaker. They take care of things. And that little play with the words just literally changed the way I entirely looked at this man, that he was caring for the school that we would go in and use and abuse, and then every night he'd clean it for us again, so it was lovely the next day. Yeah, so yeah, the capitals are really important, because in business we've got to learn how to, we know how to make environmental capital, that's easy. What we don't know is how to also make environmental capital. How does your company create more environmental resources than it uses? You know, most companies say our goal is to reduce the impact on the planet, and I say to them, why on earth would you want to do that? And they're confused, and they say, what do you mean, why? So, well, why do you want to release, why do you say you want to reduce the impact you have on the planet? And then I said, well, excuse me, you've missed the word out. What I think you're saying is you want to reduce the negative impact, you want to reduce the harm you do. And they say, yeah, but we can't say that because the PR department won't allow us to use words like we harm the planet. Okay, but let's be truthful. So you're spending all your time and your resources trying to do less harm. That's like asking a father or a husband or a wife to beat their children slightly less every day.
Right.
The end result is you're still beating your children. Surely the thing we have to do is to just play a different game completely. And it is a game. And just say, let's try and create as much positive impact on the planet as possible. And you as a mother will know this. You know, what are you doing today that brings joy to your son? You know, it's his birthday last week. You're going to have a party for him. You're going to make him feel like he's the king of the world for a day. And if you do that every day, what a life he'll have. So as a company, if we can create more resources for the planet than we use, then the planet will always there to look after us. And it's not that difficult. The obvious simple one is plant trees. If you make toilet paper and you use roughly 10,000 trees a day, then plant 12,000 trees. But these simple answers don't always work. And one of the saddest things that really broke my heart in the last few weeks was when the forests in North America got burnt down, because it just showed us how stupid we are as a species. We see this problem called climate change, and we realize that because of all the harm we do, we can pay somebody else to do something good that we think makes up for all the harm we do. So we create all this carbon, so let's pay someone else to plant some trees. So Microsoft, BP, Amazon, loads of companies planted all these trees in North America. And the very problem we were trying to prevent destroys the trees. So it destroys the mechanism we were trying to employ to cover up the fact that we're creating carbon. In a medical sense, that's an antibody reaction. It's the Gaia, the Earth system, rejecting what we're doing. And it's saying, don't play with the symptoms. Don't think you can pollute here and try and make up for it over here. Stop polluting. Then you won't need to do this. And now, of course, all those forests have been wiped out. So the positive impact they had has gone, but also they've got wiped out in such a way that all the negative impact, the carbon's been released. So we've had a double hit. And thirdly, now we're sitting here thinking, what, like your question, what can we do if we can't offset anymore? Because that fire that destroyed those is also raging across Turkey, Greece, Italy. It's going through China. It's everywhere. And it could happen every week. It was the worst 2 weeks of weather in the history of the world, or mankind's history of the world anyway, that we know of. But it's not a one-off event. it's quite probable now that we have passed several tipping points. The jet stream has shifted south and got softer, as they call it. The Gulf Stream has slowed down. If those can't be reversed, then the weather you've had in Canada and we've had in Europe and in Asia, it's going to be the norm. It could happen every weekend. We don't know how to live on a planet in which that will happen. And it's not just the fact that forests get destroyed and thousands of cars and houses get destroyed, but arable land gets destroyed. Land becomes uninhabitable. We haven't seen yet the tidal wave, the tsunami of refugees. And these aren't poor people. These will be everybody moving out of the big cities, moving to literally higher ground. When that hits, then we have a real problem. How do we cope with that? So yeah, 10 years doesn't sound long when you think of those problems, you know, and as Napoleon Tree's motto says, if the trees take 70 years to grow, we better plant them now, you know. So let's not kid ourselves that we can leave this task to the next generation. We've got to work with the next generation to help them create the solutions that they will need so they can live and bring up their children.
Beautifully said. I can listen to you all day. You're just a ton of wisdom, Gwyn. What was my takeaway from all that was, I know in Stephen Covey's book of habits, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talked about EBA, and he called it emotional bank account. But in the context of what you're saying, I changed E to environmental bank account. So if we, as a person, one person every day, just think about how can I deposit an environmental bank account, caretake of Mother Nature, I think we'll be way ahead in the next 10 years, which leads me to my last question. What hasn't changed in the last decade that you think will still continue moving forward?
The truth. The truth hasn't changed. The truth is that the governments are paying lip service to this. The truth is that the governments have no intent or commitment to change. They are so heavily invested in the status quo. And they talk about it. You know, today as we speak, our illustrious Prime Minister is visiting the States to try and convince people that they should sign up to COP26 targets, when his own government has just extended oil drilling rights in the North Sea and is opening up a new coal mine in north of England. The hypocrisy is unbridled. So that's the sad truth. The truth hasn't changed. The truth is, if there is a war against climate change, then we have to work out who is the opposing army. Because actually it's me and you and our leaders. And I think the truth I would like to bring to people, or to suggest to people, is that we don't have political leaders, we have political followers. They will do anything to get votes. You know, Trump has shown this, all politicians show this. That's not a weakness, that's a feature of the game that we're ignoring. We've assigned to them this status of leader, you know, this great leader. They're not. They are nothing but servant leaders who have forgotten how to serve. They are public servants. So we, the army, the Shambhala warriors, if you like, have got to rise up and with compassion and insight, tell them exactly what we need them to do in order to get our vote next time. And it's what you said, it's create the environmental capital, create the social capital, create the future, and not make pledges, take action. I think COP26 is our last chance. If we don't get decisive action out of there, if we don't get the national leaders working on a global basis where we support the poorer, less developed nations to buy their way past the carbon era into the non-carbon era, if we don't, take action that will get rid of all our fossil fuel industry or get it down to the level that we need it to be, and to create the green future, if we don't take action in the next 6 months, I think the next 10 years is going to be a waste of time. So that hasn't changed. In 2007 in Britain, which is when I started to get conscious, a hero appeared. He was a treasury minister, unknown at the time, but he was Robert Stern, and he wrote Rod Stern, sorry, he wrote the Stern Report. And this was a government treasury document that laid out in treasury terms how inexpensive it would be to invest so we avoid climate change, compared with how expensive it will be, like an order of magnitude 10 times more expensive, to cope with it every year. It was a government document, and every government since then has ignored it. It wasn't Greenpeace, it wasn't Friends of the Earth, it wasn't Satish Kumar, it wasn't, tree huggers. This was hard, dyed in the wool economists and treasury scientists saying this. How could we have ignored that? So that was the truth then. It's still the truth now. The cheapest route to go is to invest everything we have in a green future. The most expensive route is to do nothing. That's the truth that is universal and has been largely ignored.
Yes, it's quite sad, and it's fascinating that that's one thing I remembered from our last meeting from the ASP, what you were saying about, the government, they are just placed there by the people in our own way. I remember I shared with you the 3 pillars of sustainability is leadership, is the people. We are leaders in our own way. And if we do the right things, even though no one's watching, we'll be way ahead. So I'd like to close this interview, Gwyn, with maybe you can tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Wow. Well, the simple way is just to go to my LinkedIn profile, Gwyn Jones. If you connect with me, I connect with just about anybody who wants to connect. ASP's purpose is to connect, challenge, and support. It all starts with connection. So my email is on there, or you can go to the sustainabilitypractitioners.org website. All our profiles are there, and you can connect via that way as well. So I look forward to anyone that comes forward to open the discussion and join in the discussion.
Well, thank you very much again. And I look forward to seeing you again, because every time you speak, I learn something.
So do I. Thank you very much, Lourdes. This has been great. And I look forward to seeing all the other interviews we're going to be doing as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.